All right. Good morning to you guys. Sorry about the chaos. Been a little bit of chaos going on, but we're working through that right now. Listen, we have a lot we're going to talk about this morning. I want to just talk to you. Some massive changes in Israel are coming, and I think they're going to be a lot bigger than a lot of people think. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to spring something on David.
I'm worried.
David asked me, he said, what are we talking about today? I said, bro, I'm just going to spring it on you because I think it's really important. It's going to be a very, very important part of our discussion. I want you guys to pay close attention because when you analyze this, you begin to examine and look for the big picture, it's going to change completely how you see things. And I promise you, it's going to be very different from anything that we've talked about in recent times. Ooh, so I'm serious. It's quite the conversation. And I'll tell you this, I watched an interview with Gadi Taub recently that really, really shed some light on one issue that wasn't part of the interview, but it kind of woke me up to think about something else. And I'll show you exactly what that is in just a second. Well, I'll talk to you about it because the subject matter is very, very specific to what we're talking about here. So we're going to get into it. That's going to be a great conversation. We have other things to talk about. There's some developments going on potentially with the hostage situation. Mm-hmm. We don't know where that's going to go. I think that there are some major political issues in play here. I think that Joe Biden's flip-flop, fobble, whatever you want to call it, disaster, has something to do with what we're actually seeing with Hamas right now.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some interesting stuff to talk about there and to be looking at and to be considering. But the one thing that I do want to do very, very quickly is something that we always do, and that is I want to take a moment to thank you guys that are on YouTube and Rumble. Those of you guys that are supporting us, you are a tremendous blessing. I've got to switch account here. I was looking at David's channel. You guys are a blessing, and I wanted to just say thank you for the support that you continue to give us. I want to very quickly read some of the super chats that have come this way. Although Brad scares me with his super chats, I always get in trouble when I read his. But, you know, that's part of the fun, right? So let's read a couple of these super chats. It says, Vindog, you say, oh, that's an older one. Sorry about that, Vinny. Although you deserve to be acknowledged. You're awesome, bro. Jason Cowart, thank you for your super chat. You are awesome. Mike Sanchez, love you, bro. He's a great guy. Mikey's a really great guy. We love him. Yeah, he's a kid that I discipled. I call him a kid. He's a man. He's been a police officer for a lot of years. He's a really, really wonderful guy. But I discipled him, and he's in his 30s.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's a good kid.
30s are kids for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a kid for me.
I'll take that.
He'll always be a kid to me because, like, he's just, he's tough. He's a manly man, but he's still a kid to me.
By the way, did I tell everybody I'm worried? When Pastor James says he's going to drop something on me, I get really worried.
Hey, we're going to have fun with this one. I'm telling you, this is definitely worth the conversation. And then
hope my wife is listening.
And then this one is from Brad. Brad, you say, bro James and bro David, more honest than any politicians, 100% guaranteed. Well, I would hope so, bro. That's not quite the high standard when we talk about being more honest than most of these politicians.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, but it's like, okay, I'm glad you're not crooked.
Yep. Oops, that was the wrong thing to do. I don't know why I did that. That was bad. Wrong transition there. So we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on, and these issues are very serious. Okay, so let's do this. I have to set this question up. Okay, it's an important question. Thanks, Ab. It's an important question to set up because a lot of people in this audience will completely understand where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Right? But there are lots of people that may be watching for the first time or maybe don't understand a lot of the ins and outs of Israeli government politics, so on and so forth, that might not understand this or might not recognize where I'm going when I bring this particular issue up, which is why I think it's really important to discuss right now for a moment. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a background. Okay, as we've always talked about, Israeli government is very unique in that it isn't just an average parliamentary structure, but it involves a very carefully orchestrated. How about we put this? A very carefully orchestrated group of alliances that have to take place that make sure that not only the government actually assembles, but that the government actually maintains its viability. How about we put it that way?
Authority.
Yeah. So in the United States of America, which we're nothing like a parliament, but in the United States of America, when you vote, we're a republic.
You're not even a democracy, I find.
No, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is very different from a republic. It's a constitutional republic.
Yeah.
Right? Iran is a republic, believe it or not, but it's not the kind of republic that anybody wants to be a part of.
They've got a new president.
Yeah, right. Oh, boy. That's a whole lot of other... We got to have some discussion about that. That president will be more brutal than Raisi ever was.
Yep.
And Khomeini, there's so much to say about that. Maybe we could talk about that for a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Where are we going?
In the United States of America, when you vote for somebody, they stay in office, and there is, in essence, a term limit in many contexts where once you vote for somebody at the end of their 4 years or 2 years in some cases, then they have to be voted for again.
Yep.
And there's an election process and so on and so forth. Now, in Israel, it is something similar to that. However,
we don't vote for people, we vote for parties.
That's right. You vote for parties. And not only do you vote for parties, but once a government has been assembled, you have no guarantees that that government will stay together.
Yep.
Okay? Because that government can break up based on a whole series of variables that are, it would take us hours and hours and hours and hours to discuss. But the reality of it is there's a bunch of things that could cause the government to fail. Now, let me just say this. When we say the government fails, that is an ominous picture. Like it's scary, like, oh my gosh, the government failed and the country's over. In Israel, it's like, let's go have lunch, okay? The government fails in Israel. It just means it's time to start voting and reassemble.
I think we've had 6 elections in the last 8 years.
That's right.
Or something like that.
That's right. So there's no such thing as let's wait until the 2022 election, or let's wait until the 2020, or let's wait until 2024.
Governments fall apart.
Yeah, they fall apart. So
they're glued together very, precariously, and they fall apart when the glue falls apart.
Amen. Yeah, and they're intricate. There's so much to this. Okay? Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because over the years in Israeli culture, Israeli government, there have been very specific groups of people, parties very specifically, that have always been regarded as the glue party. Okay, the party that in essence is the
kingmakers.
The kingmakers. They're the ones that in essence decide who has the majority and who in essence creates the government.
By the way, it doesn't always have to even be in the majority, but we
right.
can go into the nuances of that.
That's right. Matter of fact, we depend in Israeli government. You almost depend on the fact that it doesn't have to be a majority for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, okay, but there's a similar situation to your electoral college or college electorate that wants to take the majority or wants to dilute a little bit of majority rules, and we have a system that actually tries to function in the same way.
It, in essence, compensates for what we call a republic infrastructure or a constitutional republic. What Israel does is very similar, but it isn't. It's difficult to kind of explain it. One of these days, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I've been working on. And one of these days, I'm going to sit down and just to explain everybody from beginning to end how Israeli government works. And I think every American will be able to understand it easily after I do that.
Here's the problem. Even if you do explain the mechanism of the carburetor of the machine, you don't get the essence of the car. I mean, is it low slung or
That's why I've been working on this for a year. Because I don't want to give them the mechanics of the machine.
Because if you talk about Israeli politics without reeling in the religious or the Orthodox parties,
okay, but see, that's where we're going to go today. Okay, that's where we're going,
or the different versions of the Orthodox parties.
That's right.
For instance, different factions of Orthodox, and the de-separation, and I haven't even talked about the Arab parties.
Yeah. Well, okay.
So let's. Go.
So now this is kind of interesting with the Arab parties. For the first time in as long as I can remember, probably 12 or 13 years, one of the Arab parties had such a significant influence on the development of the last government that it was shocking. Like I was like, wow, we just gave this little Arab corner here more power than they've probably ever had in a very, very long time.
Okay, if there's a label that I'm going to put on Israeli politics, it's the power of the minorities.
Yes.
Okay, and it really works well in Israeli politics that minorities have power that is above and beyond their actual numbers. If that is a way to kind of put it together.
Yep.
And because we vote for parties, not for people, and the parties are the ones who decide who are their representatives, meaning.
Right.
They are the ones who actually decide. So the party actually comes together and says, okay, I have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4.
Yep.
So when you vote for the party, you know what the numbers are.
Yep.
Here's the thing. They can change that until the day of the election. The minute somebody is voted in, he is a member of parliament, not even regarding what party he's from.
That's right.
For instance, if he decides to betray his party and vote against what his party tells him to do, you can't kick him out of the government. You can't take away his seat in the parliament,
which we saw with Bennett. Yeah,
we saw with Bennett and with others, by the way,
that's right.
and with others along the way. So it is what I would call a coalition system, and the key word on what's happening in Israeli politics is a coalition, meaning the party that is decided to be the government has to glue together small parties in a coalition that becomes an entity in itself.
Yeah.
And that is the majority that allows them to govern. Now, it doesn't. The coalition has to be more than 61.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm going to show you a picture. This will actually be very helpful. I am going to show you a picture of the formation of Bennett's government. This was a few governments ago. It's important that we bring this out because what I want everybody to do, I want everybody to be able to see is the dynamic involved in this. And I'm going to bring this up to you because I want everybody, when I say you, I'm talking about the audience. I want everybody to understand how this works so that you know how dynamic things are about to change in Israel. It's scary. It's actually scary. Let me just show you this, and then from there we'll better explain everything. Now you'll see a thing here that says the new Israeli government. I mean, obviously, when you look at this,
2022.
Yes, this is from 2022. As a matter of fact, let me do this because I know some people will probably complain about. Which rightly so, because it's kind of small. Some people will complain about the size of the image. So what I'm actually going to do is I'll actually just turn this on and put us in the bottom right-hand corner so that you guys can see this, okay? Now, we're going to talk about the differences between right, left, and center in Israel because right, left, and center is nothing like right, left, and center in the United States of America, okay? What's interesting here, okay, and this is like a very, very critical thing to understand, is when you look at the center, okay, and then you look at what we would call left of center and you look at right of center, you'll notice that outside of center, you don't have significant numbers represented, okay? If you look at the number count that is on the right and you look at the number count that's on the left, you can see how easily the unification of a government can shift.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? You can see it. What I want you to focus on is the white bar that is on the top right. This is called the Ra'am party. We say Ra'am in Arabic. In Hebrew, yeah, that's right. In Hebrew, it's a slightly different word. That right there, you look at number 4. Number 4 was the whole reason why Bennett became the prime minister. If in essence it wasn't for how they were able to maneuver number 4, then in essence, Bennett would not have come into office.
How many do you have here altogether? I mean, do you have a count here?
Well, we can do a count really quickly. 15, 21, 28, 34. I'm doing it very, very slowly here so I can be cautious. 41, Plus 4. Yeah. So you're not seeing the complete number here.
So
now, by the way, there's a withdraw. There's a reason why there wasn't a complete number put here. By the way,
so you don't have the 61 here.
I believe we do have the 61
with Ram or without Ram.
With Ram.
All right, that is a first. That is the first government that actually had an Arab party inside the 61.
Thank you.
That's what happened with the last Bennett government.
Yeah. So that right there started a significant precedent. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this is going to sound really bad. Can I just say this? And Netanyahu did this.
Here we go.
The Bennett government did this. Lapid's government did it. But that you can't really count Yair Lapid because it was just a holding spot. He left the foreign minister's position and kind of held the spot until they assembled a new government after Bennett's government failed. But let me just say this. One thing happened that opened up the eyes of people in Israeli politics. I'm talking about the politicians, not necessarily the people of Israel, but the politicians of Israel. And they realized very quickly, which by the way, Netanyahu did this, which is why we're here. This is why we're about to run into a problem where everything's going to change. They begin to realize, the coalition leaders or the party leaders, by the way, Likud especially are the ones that are very conscious of this right now. Very, very conscious of this. Okay?
Before one thing that I think is not really clear. What you're seeing on the screen right now is not all of the Israeli politics.
That's
you're
right.
seeing a government that was created based on things that were right of center and left of center. What
That's
you're
right.
missing here is not the rest of the political map of Israel,
That's
which
right.
would include the Orthodox, the National Orthodox, the Ultra-Orthodox, and the Sephardic Orthodox.
But I'm about to go there.
Okay.
I'm going there. Just watch me. You're gonna appreciate this because you're gonna have a whole lot to say in just a minute. Okay. All right. So when this happened,
all right.
Okay, and the Bennett government was assembled, Bennett somehow felt empowered to literally stab his own party in the back in many ways. Okay. Not only did he do that, but he was given license to do that to a degree because his vote was in essence an I hate Netanyahu vote. That's in essence what it was.
Oh, by the way, this whole election was we want Netanyahu out.
Yeah, that's right. That's what this whole thing was all about. Okay. But his operation in essence was almost exactly that. Okay. As a matter of fact, what's really, really crazy is Bennett even identified and made concessions and promises to the Labor Party, which is like way, way left of anything Bennett ever said he was going to stand for or talk about. Okay? But I'm distracting myself. What they did, and it was a brilliant political maneuvering, is they sat down with the Arabs and they made an agreement that the Arabs would concede to. I don't know what exact concessions were made because they're not required to disclose those concessions.
Exactly. By the way, negotiations in the coalition, part of it is public, but part of it is not.
Very private. Very, like top secret.
Yeah, but I'm going to say something. In Israeli politics, you can't keep much things
That's right.
secret.
Yeah, it eventually comes out.
It does.
Because what you conceded to or what you chose to take is going to come out to the public in general. So people are going to go, oh, yeah, that's where it was.
So the brother of the head of the party that made the concession is getting a new job as the ambassador in Kuala Lumpur.
100%.
And you're going to see what's going on. I mean, you know.
Yeah, there's going to be money involved. There's going to be all kinds of things. Okay.
By the way, it's mostly money, yes.
Yeah. Now I'm going to say something kind of crazy.
Okay.
And some people can agree with me, some people won't. And that's fine.
I think he's afraid that I won't.
No, I don't think you will. I don't think you'll disagree with me. I just think you'll go, wow, maybe that was something I haven't discussed with anybody. Okay. But the genius, I'm going to call it genius. I don't know if I want to call it genius. I just want to say maybe there was something spiritual there, and Bennett stumbled upon it on accident, and in essence gained something that had never been done before, at least not in recent Jewish governments. And what he did was he managed to leverage the Ra'am party, take their votes, and use it to be the very thing that took his coalition over the top and put them in power. Now, here's where I'm going to say something I think is kind of risky, but I'm just going to say it. I think some of the concessions that Lapid or that Bennett made.
By the way,
Bennett Lapid, we say that the Bennett Lapid administration. That's why I oftentimes interchange them or conflate them because they're the same people in essence. At least for this government, it is. I believe that the concessions that were made to Ra'am had a lot to do with some of the things that led up to October 7th, without him even realizing what he did.
Okay,
because by him giving legitimacy to the power that the Arab party had in this context, a lot of people in Judea, Samaria, and in Gaza felt a lot more empowered and comfortable with the position that they had in being able to create, for lack of a better term, the false image of us working with Israel under peaceful terms. The leaders of Hamas even said it. We got Israel to think everything was okay. I'm willing to bet you that when the Ra'am party did what they did for Bennett and Lapid, it caused the guards to go down.
It was a Trojan horse.
In essence, it was a Trojan horse. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that the members of Ra'am actually had this attack in mind when all this was going on, but I am going to say that it was a very powerful tactic that was deployed to cause Israelis to function more cooperatively with the Arabs, understanding and knowing that most Israelis prior to October the 7th had the mindset that says if we work with the Palestinians, then maybe a two-state solution won't be so bad because it will help us to grow our interests the way we want it. That's changed, by the way. I'm going to just tell you this right now. Left or right, you're not getting anybody to agree to a two-state solution. No way. No way.
I'm processing this, and I had a theory about this that is a little bit different. And I think the main difference would be the, how do you say, the plan or the overall plan.
Yeah. And by the way, I know where you're going with this, and I will just tell you, when you say that, I think you're right on. I do believe that the picture of the overall plan was very subjective. In other words, when this happened, it triggered a bit of an opportunistic
I think it triggered something.
Mindset.
So let's start off with the agreement. I totally agree that it triggered something. Okay. But I think this was part of the overall trigger that I would include what's happening in Jordan, and I would include Saudi Arabia.
I agree with you.
For instance, Hamas said very clear that the upcoming cooperation between Saudi Arabia and Israel was part of the trigger, because they said when we say that we believe in no existence, no compromise, no peace with the Jewish entity, when we see our Arab brothers willing to reach compromises with the Zionist entity, they don't even say Israel, then we have to do something to stop that.
Yeah. You're right.
And I think the Ram Tal, and what you're saying, the first time that an Arab party was part of the Israeli political system, the first time that the Arab parties actually were legitimate parts of, I'm going to say legitimate or legal parts of the coalition that was created, this was the first time.
Yeah.
I think that Hamas, which is saying there's no cooperation with Israel, we can't do this, saw that as another indication very similar to the Saudi Arabia.
David, you are more right about this than you realize, because I'll tell you why right now.
Okay.
When we talk about the issue of them jumping the gun and launching an attack without working together with Hezbollah and other people, that's exactly what drives that a little bit.
Exactly. Okay? No. And that is the main, the jumping the gun. Okay, so let's go back.
Wait, but while we have this thought, can I just take this before we go back? I just want to take this a step further, okay? Because we're going to go somewhere with this, because this is really, really interesting, okay? Because I don't want to lose the thought, because everybody has this fresh on their mind, I want to bring up what's going to drive the rest of our conversation, okay? Okay. Oh, and let me go back. Let me switch this chart here because we don't need the chart again. Okay. Just like, so when that happened, it changed the way people look at political infrastructures, especially Netanyahu. I have a theory that it's not a theory. I know what happened. Something clicked in Netanyahu where he recognized, wait, we never considered the fact that we can take a minority party and use them to be the mechanism that provides the leverage to get us over the top. It wasn't something that ever really occurred to them on that level. Now, when I say that, you look a bit puzzled by me making that statement, but let me back up so I can be a little bit more clear. The minority parties that have been used to leverage the position have always been minority parties that were not on the fringe of each side of the party infrastructure. It's always been people that are closer to the center that they will leverage to be able to get the existing votes to create the assembly of the government. No one has ever really thought of, because of the political ramifications, going to groups of people that represent an extreme right or left, so to speak, to tip the table. Because they knew that it would be very hard to stay in power once it got put into place. When this happened with this Arab party, I think it triggered something, and Netanyahu immediately went to the ultra-Orthodox to be the tipping point.
Okay, let's see if I can kind of...
I will continue that thought in just a second, because where I'm going to go and put you on the spot is really crazy.
Okay, let's lay it out, all right?
Okay.
Ultra left, ultra right in Israel are not exactly the same left and right as you have here.
100%, and we should talk about that.
So, so ultra left would be more woke, progressive, human rights, and support of Palestinian rights and things on one side.
Yep.
Okay?
That's right.
All right. Secular, for instance. The ultra left is secular. Gay marriages.
More secular leaning. That's right.
And all of that. All right. That's the ultra left. The ultra right in Israel, though, is a little bit different. The ultra right is very religious.
That's right.
And there's different kinds of religious in Israel. Judaism is a very fascinating religion. So you have the Orthodox religious, which are the traditional, some of them downright anti-Zionist.
That's right.
And then you have the what we call the nationalistic religious that have risen up since the rebirth of the state of Israel. And that is the Smotrich and Ben Gvir elements in there, that they're ultra-nationalistic, ultra-Israel is all ours, ultra... And they are also religious. So they also say, wait a minute, we're not going to allow gay marriage. Wait a minute, we're going to not allow.
That's right.
And the whole country should be. So on those two, but right smack in the middle of this, and a lot of people, and what Benjamin Netanyahu has been doing for the last 12 years has been using the Orthodox religious.
That's right.
That are not left and not right. They're actually, they smack in the middle, using them as the kingmakers because they have no real politics. What they have is a budgeting money, give money to our institutions kind of idea.
Yep.
And he actually knew that no matter what the politics were, as long as he's paying them, they will keep him in power. And that's why for at least, I think, 6 of the last 12, maybe 8 of the last 12 governments, they were all based on a combination between Benjamin Netanyahu and the Orthodox.
Yep.
Now, because of what happened with the Arabs, Benjamin Netanyahu decided that he can go to the other side, and he uses Smotrich and Ben Gvir to hold up his government because they're about as far right as the Arabs are on the other side.
That's right. Now, I'm going to take this a step further.
Let's go.
Okay, because what you said is, like, I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely brilliant. Like, great way of describing it. Okay. All right. So the apex of the stability variable that Netanyahu uses to keep himself in power centers around this group of Jews who, like you said, are somewhat even anti-Zionist, which means there are a series of things that they want in order to be to stay in support of Netanyahu. Mm-hmm. It's a dream situation for Netanyahu because it's almost like a give me what I want and leave me alone.
Yep.
Okay? That's changed. In that, because he's gone to the far extreme, what we would call the far extreme, right? Like you were talking about, the demand variables are increasing. Now, normally, that would not be a concern for Netanyahu. This was a calculated decision he made. When he went to the Gavirs, when he went in that direction, it was very calculated. It was the same kind of calculation that Bennett used when, probably more sophisticated calculation than Bennett, by the way. I think Bennett's thing was an accidental type of a thing. But it was a lot more sophisticated of a calculation than Bennett. But either way, he still used the Ra'am mentality, okay? The same kind of idea. What was calculated about what he did was he knew that if he could not please the extreme right to a certain degree, that it would still be okay so long as the body of people represented on that side got the basics of what they wanted in the context of wartime. Let me explain what I mean when I say that. Number one issue to these Orthodox people right now happens to be, we don't want to go to war. We don't want our kids to go to war. We don't want to be in the IDF. It's one of them. There's a few big issues with them, right? But this is a big one, right? A super big one. And some really smart people on the other side have decided to make an issue of it with the courts. And this is where I'm going to put you on the spot over, because this is where Israel is about to change, and it's about to change significantly. The courts basically have said, tough luck. These Orthodox Jews have to serve in the IDF.
Okay. Can I round this up and give a little bit of background so we know what's going on?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, please do that. And then because there's another layer to this that I want to add that's even crazier, because the Supreme Court actually was very smart. Well, we call it the Supreme Court, but Israel's High Court got really smart about it and said, sorry, you actually have to make a law that says that this is the case for these people, and it has to be based on a quota, not based on some administrative declaration. Well, guess what? Bennett was already working on something like that with his government, Coalition. And they did that basically to appease the right-wing side from actually damaging or destroying the government, which in a sense they already did. Well, that got put away and put to the side, and now it looks like Netanyahu's going to try to pick that up and create a law to do that. Good luck on that, but that's a whole other issue.
That's what we're coming to. Okay, so let's explain the basis of the whole dynamic.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, in 1948, the state of Israel becomes a country, and David Ben-Gurion, who was the defense minister and the prime minister at the same time, realized that we cannot defend the country with a standing army. So a couple of decisions are made. First of all, everybody at the age of 18 goes into the military and serves for 3 years. Guys for 3 years, girls for 2 years. And everybody does that, okay? Everybody but the Arabs. So, we're not really sure about the Arabs, and we're not ready. So we're not going to put the Arabs in the military. So, but everybody else is supposed to do the military. Another thing that they decide is after you finish your 3 years of military, the government has the right to call you into reserve duty, very similar to your National Guards.
Yep.
And I did 6 years of regular military and then 30 years in the reserves, which is fine. Okay. By the way, there's a different discussion on that one. But here's the problem. Down through the ages, the Jewish people have always been a minority. We've never been the government. We've never been the politics. We've never been the landowners. We've never been this. And as a result of that, Jews have not served in the armies in the different nations that they were in. We didn't serve in the Russian army. We didn't serve. There was always, we're different, and people didn't want us. But all Jewish communities down through the ages, by tradition, had a spiritual side, meaning we always believed that somebody should take care of the spiritual safety of the community. The way Jews do that is what we call studying the law, which basically means people that dedicate themselves to the religion, to the spirituality, to actually debating, studying, and learning the law and the interpretations of the law. They're called students of the law. And for many, many years, religious Jews believe that these people who studied the law are what is saving Israel the people of Israel in great times of need. Meaning the fact that there is somebody who's willing to dedicate his life to this spiritual endeavor is what guards Israel from its enemies more than any tanks or any guns that we have.
Yep.
That was the tradition. 1948, Israel becomes a nation. And David Ben-Gurion says, okay, now we're going to have tanks and we're going to have guns. And we need everybody to be a part of that. And the religious come to Ben-Gurion and say, wait a minute, now this is a Jewish state. We need to have people to continue the studying of the law.
Yeah.
And on the Jews. And Ben-Gurion says, well, yes, maybe. And he says, how many are there? And they said about 10,000 a year. And he says, okay, I'm willing to exempt young men who are Orthodox and pious enough and religious enough to say they want to do that their whole life. I'm willing to exempt them from military service. They will not be called up. But there's one condition that is connected to that, and he said that, and that was stated in the law, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was, if you're not going to serve in the military and you've decided to dedicate your life to the monastery, if you want to live in the monastery, that's fine, but you don't get out of the 3 years of military service by living in the monastery and then leave the monastery and join the public.
Yeah.
If you're not serving in the military, you don't have a right to go get a job and become a normal person. You have to live off of that way of life.
That's right.
That was the basic condition. And for many years, that was the situation. The thing is, there's a lot more today than there were in the past.
Yep.
And that's become a growing problem in Israeli society that, one, the Orthodox don't serve in the military, but also they don't go to work and they actually don't pay taxes, they don't pay health care, and they are being totally funded by Israel's social system, Social Security, and if you don't have an income, you can't pay income tax, and so forth and so on.
That's right.
But that wasn't enough for them. And here we come to tie this into everything that we talked about. This large number of young men, women, and families, by the way, they have a lot of kids, okay, were being supported and funded by the concessions that the governments made to the religious parties in order to keep them in power. Meaning, Benjamin Netanyahu, in order to stay in power, would pay Shas and would pay Yadut HaTorah, which are two of the Orthodox, and fund their learning institutions. So if the guys are in a yeshiva, okay, my tax money paid for housing for these young students. My tax money was paying for their health care. My tax money was, they didn't pay anything into the system, and they not only made off the social aspects of the system, meaning if you have 6 kids, you don't pay income tax, but they were being funded, and a lot of that funding went into special programs for religious families, special daycare programs for religious families, special health care and teeth programs and all kinds of this. So the politics were funding this way of life that was a growing percentage of Israelis, and a lot of Israelis were seeing it as a problem. That is the backdrop, and then comes the war.
Yeah, and then can I add to the backdrop for just a little bit on that? Probably, what would you say, David? Probably the last 15 years, maybe 20? Let me just say the last 15 to 20 years, it got a little bit more complicated because the people who claim to be the ultra-Orthodox also stopped doing what they said they wanted to do. And like you said, just became general dependents of the state.
Yeah.
Like, for example, by the way, Jews overall never had a problem doing this. And the reason why they never had a problem doing this was because if you remember, when we read about Israel early on in the Old Testament, there were a group of people called the Levites, the Kohathites. They were the ones that, in essence, were supported by the rest of Israel's infrastructure. But remember, they never owned land. They didn't have any real ownership in anything other than the religious infrastructure.
By the way, a lot of religions, I mean, monks in Asia live in that way.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And Christian monks have a certain tendency like that. So again, that was the normal procedure. The problem is the numbers have grown.
Yeah, and not only have they grown, David, but they've grown without any reciprocal service. I have a philosophy of this. I think if those numbers had grown and we saw a whole bunch more people in Israel looking to preserve the social infrastructure, these men serving, these people going and teaching in, whatever. It could be anything. It could they could be sitting down and having community center meetings. Acting like rabbis.
Old people's homes,
right? Old people's, so whatever. The Jews would never blink.
Okay,
it wouldn't be an issue.
But okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here a moment, so you can understand it's not so black and white. And again, I'm going into tour guide mode. Let's see if I can explain this. There was in 1948 there was a battle for the city of Safed, which was half Arab and half Jewish. And Safed was very well known because that's where the Kabbalah was written, and that's a center of Jewish study. So there's a lot of rabbis and a lot of Jewish students and a lot of yeshivas in Safed. And in 1948, by the way, Mahmoud Abbas is from there.
Yeah, that's right.
And in 1948, the battle was very, 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 very tight. And the Haganah, which was the Jewish secular military, managed to push some units into Safed. And everybody who came in to help defend Safed came with another rifle on the back to give to the local inhabitants of the city of Safed a weapon so they can be a part of the battle. So they come to the yeshiva, knock on the door, and they say, we've got a whole bunch of rifles here. We need you to come and kind of be in the trenches with us. And the rabbi said, no, we stay in our yeshivas to study. We don't go to fight. And the head of the Haganah was very, very upset about this. And the battle was fought, and it was very, very close, and we almost lost. And he lost men. Men died in the trenches. People died in order to save the city. People died to save these guys in the yeshiva. And after the battle, I mean, they were really upset. And he came to them and said, why didn't you join us to fight? Why didn't you help us? And the rabbi said, we did. He said, but we almost lost this battle. And look at all my men who were killed. And the rabbi said, why do you think you won?
This I didn't know. This is fascinating. I did not know this.
You won because we were praying.
Yeah. Wow,
okay.
That's interesting.
So you have that mentality on both sides of this. They believe that they are doing a service to Israel. They believe that what they're doing is saving Israel. That's the whole basics of the idea. And they need to be funded, supported, and budgeted for doing that.
Yeah.
So that's the basic aspect of what we're talking about. The question is, how many? And the problem is that it's become a whole way of life for a large amount of people. A lot of them, as we said, are not even supporters of the state of Israel. And that's part of the dynamic that we're talking about. So those are the two sides. But here's the thing. Israel has been complaining. The secular middle-class Israelis who serve in the military and pay taxes, by the way, some of them religious, okay, but who serve in the military and pay taxes are complaining that the Orthodox are not part of supporting the country.
Yeah.
And now the war comes. And that dynamic that was included, and that government that you showed, one of the reasons that government came to power is because Yair Lapid and Bennett said, we will find a way to include the Orthodox into Israeli society. Even if they don't serve in the military, let's find a way to educate them, at least so they can do some kind of job, at least so they can do something. For instance, one of the main things that brought this government to power was the fact that we will make a law that says that the religious schools have to teach basic mathematics or arithmetic and basic English. Because if a person doesn't have even basic English and basic arithmetic, he can't get a job no matter what. Even if we exempt him from the military and say, okay, go to work, because some of them are actually sitting in the yeshiva and not doing anything.
Yeah.
Go to work, support your family, pay taxes, be a support, get a job. I mean, the high-tech industry was willing. I mean, the Jewish mindset, the way they study, is very inclusive for doing coding and programming. I don't know if you know that, but coding and programming is very along that line. So if we could teach them and use Israel's high-tech technology, then they will be, and you can create environments where they can, not, I mean, they're almost like Amish in the way that they kind of live this secluded life, then that's okay. So that government came to power basically in order to push something like that. Now we're back at the basic aspect of this, and let's see what's going on now.
So this is interesting because this is where I think there's going to be some major change in Israel, and it's going to be different, David. It's going to be different because there's different dynamics that exist now. Okay, now you have the High Court of Israel, which there's nothing anybody can do about it, that says if you want this type of exemption to take place,
pass a law.
You have to pass the law. The problem is, good luck trying to pass the law in a context of a political environment that is being fueled by war. And this is where it's really interesting, because what really complicates things is when October 7th happened, there were a much larger than people expected, a much larger group of Orthodox who have never served in the IDF, who said, I'm serving.
Yeah.
And came in, by the way, at the expense of being shunned by their community, at the expense of being told you're not one of us, we don't care about you, knowing full well that when they're done in their service to the IDF, they have nothing to go back to.
Well, I'll tell you what the main problem is. I know this sounds weird to say it like this, okay, but let's see if I can explain. In the Orthodox community, marriages are arranged.
Yes, that's right.
And it's a social status. I mean, and you marry somebody on your social status. People who serve in the military lose their social status, and their marriages or they lose the high level marriage organizations. It really is sad. But here's the thing. Now, in the context of the war, there's two things that happen. Three. First of all, there's more religious, like you said, that are willing, saying we want to be a part of this. Second, the Israeli secular population is saying, why is our blood thicker than theirs? I mean, why is that fair? And the last thing is happening. The military is saying, we need men. We need people to serve.
Yeah.
I mean, our reservists are wiped out. I mean, we're pulling people like David, who is a tour guide, into the units, or Sean, my nephew. He's actually was serving in Gaza. You take him out of his job, you take him out of his paying salary. When you put somebody in the army like that, you lose money by paying him his salary. He has to be paid. And he's not producing what is generating his salary for the rest of the country. So you're basically losing money twice when he is in military service. Now, you do it because you need the military, and they're sitting in the yeshiva, not doing anything, and taking a salary.
But David, this is where it gets even more complicated.
Okay.
Can I just tell you why? Because this is the part that is just fascinating to me, especially in the reading that I'm doing and some of the interviews that I'm seeing and the videos and the people that I'm hearing talking. The overwhelming majority of the people who are Orthodox, who are fighting in the military, are people that are currently in school and going through the process that you would expect them to go through. And the ones that refuse to go into the military are the ones that are doing nothing. They're not even going to school, David.
Yeah.
Imagine what that does to the mind of the general public in Israel, and imagine what that does to the military people, and imagine what that does to a lot of government officials. Wait, hold on for a second. You mean to tell me that when I look at the contingency of people that are ultra-Orthodox that are serving in the military right now, that's the number, 85% of them are walking away from their schools. They're actually young students. They're walking away. In other words, let's just say 100 people from the religious right say we're going to go in the middle from the yeshiva. It's the yeshiva that they're talking about. That's the big, okay. I'm giving an arbitrary number, a fake number. Let's just say 100 of them say that they are volunteering to go serve in the IDF. 85% of them, that means 85 of them are active students who are actively a part of their community, doing what they say they've always been doing traditionally. So, but watch this. This is the thing that's amazing. That means that an overwhelming majority of the people who are saying, no, we will not go and serve in the IDF are people that aren't even going to school. They're being bums.
No, they're living off the system.
They're living off the system.
I mean, by the way, you've got a certain amount of people that live off the system here too.
Oh, in the States, it's a whole bunch more than.
And the problem is this: once you bite into that poison apple of I don't get up in the morning and go to work, I live off of what comes into me, then it's very hard to get them back on, okay, time to get up and go to work, or time to get up and go to the military.
So you can understand the insane unpopularity that Netanyahu's about to face and the anger that people are having right now.
Which is one of the reasons that if the elections take place tomorrow, and it looks like we're getting close to elections.
I know, bro. I know.
If the elections take place tomorrow, I don't think Netanyahu is going to survive it.
By the way, here's another interesting dynamic that's beginning to take place. And I know this because I have some ties to it, but I'm watching what they're doing. The foreign minister's office is separating himself slightly from Netanyahu. And when I think of Israel Katz, he's a very strong leader in many ways. He's a very hardline type of a person. And by the way, the stand on the issue with the French, like he took a completely different picture, went a completely different way. Now I get it. The argument is, well, I'm a diplomat. Like I get that.
I'm a professional diplomat.
But bro, he's the guy that most people say
might be replaced.
Right. If they stay within the party infrastructure.
So, by the way, side note, did you hear what happened in France with the elections there?
Oh, yeah, bro. That's crazy. You want to talk about that for a second?
Well,
nobody thought. It came out of nowhere.
We were all excited that Le Pen was going, the right-wing conservative party was going to take the elections, and boom, look what. By the way, that's the parliamentary system.
Yeah, that's how the
exactly
parliament
what
works. That's right. Yep.
But now we have a very left-wing. And,
I was shocked by the way.
Rallies of glee for the new election, the Palestinian flags were flown all over the place. So France has crossed over to the dark side.
Yep.
And we're going to see that.
They've been a very. I mean, France. The only area right now that has more Sharia law courts in it than France is portions of the UK.
But maybe just to put a parenthesis, one of the things that I always find fascinating, take the Arab world, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan. Most of the people don't like Israel.
No.
But the governments are pro-Israel.
They have to be.
Exactly. So what's going to happen now, I think, in France is something very similar. The people, the majority, the French man in the street, the guy that eats the baguette, and okay, he's going to be anti-Israel, but governments are more pro-Israel than their peoples are. And now, England, same thing, vast Muslim majority, minorities turning into majority. France, minorities turning into majorities. So Western Europe we're going to see governments that are still supporting Israel for all kinds of political reasons, but the people, okay, are losing their support for Israel. And I'm sorry to say, I think we're going to see something like that happening even in the United States, where the younger generation is not supportive of Israel, and the government might be supportive of Israel for political reasons because it makes political sense, but the grassroots, I mean, everybody under 30 does not support Israel. But let's go back to what we're talking about. By the way, have we talked about Shas?
No.
Okay. So just to make it complicated.
Bring that up. That's another.
There are two main versions of Orthodox Jews in Israel. There's the Ashkenazi Orthodox and there's the Sephardic Orthodox. Ashkenazi and Sephardic are Jews that come out of Western countries, and Jews that come out originally, they're all in Israel today, out of the Eastern countries, and they're a little bit different. And to make the long story short, Shas is part of the king-making system, and they make no qualms about it. You want us on your side, you want us to support your government, you pay for it. And how do you pay? You pay by supporting our institutions, or now they're trying to pass a new law to create more government jobs, more rabbi jobs, for people in their party, and they're saying they're saying to Netanyahu, literally, if you pass that law, we will support your government. And it's classic political blackmail.
Well, it gets a lot more complicated than that, bro, because when you start talking about the interaction of the Ashkenazi, and this is so crazy. Mahmoud Abbas lately has been spending a lot of time talking about the difference between these two Jewish groups. And he has been really exhausting a lot of effort in going around to many of the Arab communities, publicly speaking, and making convincing cases for why Hitler was justified in what he did because of some of the attributes that he sees currently in the current day with some of these Jewish groups and what happened in Europe.
Yep.
He's being very smart about how he is propagandizing this issue. Okay. And when people, let's just talk about this. And when people who are under the purview of the Palestinian Authority look at all of this, they see the division that exists amongst the Israeli government concerning these Orthodox groups, and they validate the lies that Mahmoud Abbas is saying, because in their mind, if these divisions start taking place as they're taking place amongst the Jewish people, then there must be something here, because the premise of Mahmoud Abbas's statements are these are troublemakers. These are people that are coming in and they're just uprooting governments and they're destroying. Bro, it's ugly.
Okay, so what the enemy is doing, and he's been doing this on all kinds of different levels in all kinds of different places. But what the enemy is doing is, you and I both know that everything's in the gray area. Nothing is black and white. But things tend to be grayer or blacker or whiter in some ways. Classic example, okay, yes, are there Jews who were criminals? Are there Jews who, what was his name, Maidorf, who managed to scam the stock market? Yes. Are there Jews who did terrible things? Yes. Is that representative of all the Jews?
No way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so if you straw man like that, meaning, wait a minute, Jews are as bad as everybody else, okay? But again, there has to be a ruler that you measure things on.
Yeah.
And the ruler is basically God's ruler. Now, do you say that there aren't Jews who did terrible things? Yes. The question is, what does a society do? And maybe this is a good place to kind of mention one of the things that I find fascinating about. I think I sent you the article from the Jerusalem Post about it. And here's an interesting story. And I don't know if I can kind of lay this out completely, and let's see if it's relevant to what we're doing right now. And that is the fact that there are 2 or 3 Israelis that are now being put on trial for murdering a Palestinian who crossed over the border on the 7th of October, crossed into Israel, went on the rampage, stole stuff, was shooting people, but then got apprehended by the IDF, was actually subdued, and according to the prosecution, okay, 3 Jews who came to fight 3 Israelis who came to fight in the battle against the Palestinians actually executed him after he was subdued.
Yep. And
the Israeli legal system is putting them on trial for murder.
This is such a, and I didn't know if we were going to have the time to bring this one up,
but
because you sent this to me.
Yeah, and I'm going to do it quick. Okay, and I'm not going to go into whether it is or isn't. I mean, that's the legal issue.
You do realize it's not going to be quick because it's going to tick me off.
Wait a minute. Don't get ticked off. But I'm trying to read something here. Don't get ticked off.
No,
yet.
think about what we're talking about here.
Okay, I'll get to what's going to tick you off, but I want to say something here. Okay, the fact that our legal system is trying them, the fact that we have that morality, the fact that it is illegal to execute somebody who is not posing a threat, and the legal system will uphold that law. And again, whether they did or didn't, that's another thing, means that we are different from our enemies.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and that is a very positive aspect of it all. But I just want to say, don't they have footage that shows they had nothing to do with anything of a sort?
No, I think they're not going to be convicted.
Yeah, I mean,
what I'm
ridiculous.
trying to bring is the fact that I live in a country where it is illegal and the country will persecute you if you commit war crimes.
Yeah.
And again, now, weren't there places where things took place that were wrong? Yes. We had a Jewish terrorist once in Hebron who killed 29 Palestinians.
Yeah, I remember this.
But everybody, I mean, that's not the majority. So you can't say, wait a minute, you're the same as Hamas, because no, we have a legal system that says no. What I'm trying to say is this. If you've got a spectrum, okay, yes, there are Jews that are criminals, there are Jews who do wrong things, but we as a culture, like every other culture, persecutes them, and we don't agree to that. On the other hand, we have a culture who accepts and makes baseball cards out of people who kill innocent people. Yeah. And that's the main difference. What I'm trying to get is to this. Yes, we have our problems in our legal system. Yes, it is a very complicated legal system, but that is still the better system than Hamas, who is actually a theocracy that is running Gaza. And maybe that's one thing that we need to tie together.
Yeah.
Now, to tie that all to what we talked about now, I think what happened after the 7th of October, one, I think most Israelis would not accept an Arab party as part of the majority government today.
Yeah, that's right.
We have lost
That'll
trust
never happen.
in the Arabs.
Yep.
Okay. I think most Israelis have realized that we need to solve the problem with the Orthodox, because we cannot allow them not to serve and not to be a part of this country.
Well, but also, see, there's another thing that I haven't talked about yet, and I think is really important because it adds to the complications of this. There are a lot of people in the secular humanistic world in Israel that are very politically astute that say, wait, I don't believe any of the Bible stuff that you're talking about. I don't study the Torah. I don't believe any of that stuff. But I know enough about the Torah to know that in our early history in the nation of Israel, the Levites were supported by the rest of it. Because think about it. The tithe was about a 23% of everything you had number. It was a big number. So the people in Israel, early Israeli history, back in the days of the early law, they were paying 23 to 25%. That's why I always laugh at somebody when they say, well, the tithe is biblical, we pay 10%. No, 10% is a small part. It amounts to about 23, 24%. So the Levites lived off of that. It was that tithe that supported the Levites. But here's the thing that there are articles that are being written on this, bro. Okay. Like you could see it. There are people, like go look at Tablet. Some of these other places where these big articles are being written. There are people who know nothing about the Torah, know nothing about the Old Testament, know nothing about the Bible, who are saying, we know enough to know that God still required the Levites to go to battle.
Yep. And
they still fought. So, okay, fine. We'll even support you. Why aren't you going to battle? That's the thought that's going on right now.
Okay, so maybe tie this in together. Like every culture, we have our left wing, our pacifist, or woke, or progressive.
Yep. That's right.
But here's the thing. In Israel, it's very small, and even woke people join the military, okay? You can't really be a pacifist in Israel. I mean,
you can't. No way. You don't survive.
You can go to the gay parade, wear whatever you want, or don't wear whatever you want at a gay parade. But when the call comes, most Israelis would still put on the uniform.
Yes.
That's why there's not a correlation between the left and the right as far as this is concerned.
I mean, that's my point. That's why the ones this was the point that I made earlier. That's why the ones that are the ones that are actively in school studying the Torah are the ones that the overwhelming majority of the ones that are volunteering for military service are ones that are they're actually in school studying.
So here's what's going to happen. They're going to sign the agreement, and the minute the agreement is signed, it's going to be
the hostage agreement.
Hostage agreement.
Not the law that they're talking about exempting the...
The minute the agreement is signed and the war becomes, okay, we're done. By the way, there's a whole conversation about this. I'm choking on that agreement in every way
terrible.
possible.
It's terrible. They don't... I thought that they finished in Rafah. Like, what in the world are we doing?
I'll get to that. But in order to
sign the agreement, kill the hostages.
In order to finish it, the minute the agreement is signed and we are after this war in Gaza, basically, it's not going to end. There's going to be forces we're going to be doing, and remember the Philadelphia corridor, and remember the Netzarim corridor. We'll talk about that if you want to. But basically, when that is over, There's going to be a question about what's happening in the north. I have a feeling that the north will not explode. Some kind of an agreement will be reached. And then Israel's going to start, I'm going to say, clearing out the things that need to be cleared out. One of the first things that we're going to do is have an election, and Benjamin Netanyahu is not going to win the election. And what happens with the religious is going to be a major part of the election issue.
I think so.
And I think we are going to be after the I don't serve and I don't pay, I just sit in my yeshiva and study. I think the Israeli population isn't willing to do that. On the other hand, I don't think we will see trust in Arabs inside Israel for a long time.
But we also have a bigger problem on our hands, and it's a much bigger problem. And I'll ask you, you're the expert. You really are. You know this, okay? Is there any scenario you can think of in your mind? Is there any scenario you can think of in your mind where Israel survives without going to war with the North?
Long term, no. But Israel might sign something. Listen, my war was in the north. I was in Lebanon. I was in the first Lebanese war. Okay, we didn't win it. We kind of took whatever we took, conquered this. We conquered Beirut. Think about this, James. We conquered Beirut, and we kicked the PLO out of Beirut. Literally put them on ships and sent them to Tunis. But we stayed there for a couple of years and had to come out. Second Lebanese war, okay? I don't think the situation was solved. Third Lebanese war, let's say we do it and we kick the Hezbollah north of the Litani, I don't think we're going to be done. And I don't believe, and maybe we're going into what's going on, we might have a couple of years of relative quiet. But I don't believe that until we finish off the head of the snake that sits in Tehran,
that's where I'm going with it.
We're not going to finish the whole thing.
That's where I'm going with it.
But Israel Israel will reach a concession in Gaza. And I'm going to say this. I'm sorry to say it. Hamas is going to call it victory by survival.
Yeah.
Is the term that I'm going to say. And I don't think Israel has won this war yet. We're going to have to learn how to live with the situation. But I don't think we've won this war. And our government is probably, for sake of the hostages and for sake of the politics, and these two things are coming together, are going to allow Hamas victory by survival.
Yeah, that's right. I want to address something really quickly. Nicole WB made a comment. She said, instead of serving on the front lines, they can be doctors, nurses, techs, or warehouse or work for the military. You're right. The problem is this, and this is where the big problem is, and most Israeli culture, or most people in Israel's society knows this. Most of them refuse to be educated on levels like that would give them proficiency to be able to do it. That's the problem.
Well,
they're not going to secular schools.
There's a couple of things that connected them. One of the problems with the Orthodox, by the way, both the right-wing Orthodox and the regular Orthodox, is a way of life. They live a secular, secluded way of life. The food has to be more kosher than others. The dress has to be different. And I'm going to say even more than that, the interaction between men and women in these units has to be zero, which means most of the training and most of the teaching is done by women in the Israeli army. And they're not allowed to interact with women. So if you want to teach them to be tank drivers, okay, the women are the ones who drive the tanks and teach people how to drive tanks. So you're going to have to find a whole new education system where, you train only men to teach these Orthodox people how to drive tanks. And that's become a problem. It's even become a legal problem, okay, in some cases. So it is a very complex, but I think we're coming to this right now. And here's my question, okay? America is playing a role in all of this. The United States of America is playing a role in what's happening in Gaza. This new negotiation that's going on, this is being pushed with everything possible by the American administration right now.
That's right.
Okay? And for all kinds of reasons, I don't think maybe it's right, but the Israeli government is bowing down to American pressure to a certain extent. I'm kind of trying to say we should kind of maybe wait and see what administration comes to power, which brings us to this situation. What administration is going to come to power here?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The Trump campaign is making some of the biggest mistakes they have ever made, ever, since their existence.
No.
Now. And it may dramatically affect their ability to win this election. I'm going to tell you this right now. All it takes is for them to put somebody worth running, and they will beat Trump.
Right now.
Right now.
So
you put Michelle Obama in there, Trump loses.
So what I'm trying to say
you
is...
might even be able to run Kamala against Trump and actually have her win. Because there is still a massive sentiment of people that remain brainwashed about how they do not like him. But even more than that, Trump is burning a lot of bridges by his abortion stand.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem.
So if I understand correctly, though, as long as Biden stays in the race, it's better that he stays.
If Biden stays in the race, Trump wins. 100% Trump wins.
So let's hope,
by the way,
does.
Vindoc says this. He says today's NATO meeting with Biden could have a significant pendulum shift as far as the rest of the world coming against Israel. The only reason why, Vin, I would wholeheartedly agree with that statement. If you made that statement 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I would say no way. But the reason why I wholeheartedly agree with you in that is because when they get together, when NATO gets together, they're going to do everything they can to take the focus away from the problem they're having in Russia. And that's the fact that they're losing. And what they're going to end up doing is they're going to come together and they're going to end up dealing with mechanisms that aggressively focus on what's happening in Israel to take everybody's eyes off of the problem in Ukraine.
Who's winning in Ukraine, do you think?
Russia, by a long shot.
Then why did Russia fire rockets into downtown Kyiv?
Because Russia is showing that they mean business. There's a big thing to do with it. By the way, we don't know for sure if it was Russia that actually did that. There's still a lot of back and forth on what's going on. So we need to wait until the correct intelligence comes in. Because this is a play that Ukraine has done before. Like, for example, Ukraine fired its own missiles that, of course, were Russian-made into some of its nuclear facilities. Okay?
Really?
Yeah. And for a while, they were saying, oh, look at what Russia did, look at what Russia did. Now they realize, oh, no, that was Ukraine. So I don't want to be quick to say that that's exactly what's going on here. But the one thing I do want to say is I want to say that they are upping the game in trying to focus on something that is a deterrent, an active deterrent away from what's happening in Russia, which, by the way, is the very reason why Zelensky is becoming more aggressive where he's at, because he's wanting to make it a little bit more bloody so that people's heads will turn and pay attention to what's going on.
Well, I want to get out of Ukraine a minute, and let's go back to the NATO meeting.
Yeah, okay? That's very important.
Let's put it this way.
Carol Wilkins, thank you so much. God bless you.
Do you see any way that NATO can be mixed in a full-out Middle East war? Meaning, think about this. It does blow up with Hezbollah. Israel goes in full reign to Hezbollah. Iran starts pulling out its assets. And all of a sudden, you've got America pulled into some kind of dynamic where they have to spend time and money in order to safeguard the Straits of Hormuz or to safeguard shipping in the Mediterranean. Here you go.
I'm of the persuasion that NATO's main interest is going to actually probably be more around the Baltics is my guess. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, like, me and David right now are looking at a NATO map, right? Obviously, the southern portion of all of the NATO nations is the Mediterranean. The problem is they have no real benefit that they can gain from trying to regulate the function of the Mediterranean only because they have a majority of control in that area. So now what you're having to do is you're having to mess with northern Algeria, you're having to mess with a portion of Tunisia and Morocco, which all, really Morocco more than anybody stands with Israel. And then, of course, you have the problem with Libya, which is Russia's stand.
I'm talking about in the war between Hezbollah and Israel. Hezbollah starts targeting Western shipping in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Hamas
yeah,
starts targeting.
Yep.
I mean, just think about.
Yeah, we're talking about Cyprus, in essence.
Not only Cyprus. I mean, just think about an Italian ship blown up on offshore in the Eastern Mediterranean by the Hezbollah because they were actually sending components to Israel.
Yeah.
Will NATO step in to actually safeguard shipping, let's say, in the Mediterranean Sea? And if that happens, will NATO find themselves head-to-head with the Iranians?
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. No.
And don't forget that Turkey's part of NATO, too.
NATO won't do it. And the reason why NATO won't do it is because they're already beginning to splinter over Article 5. No way.
So if Western shipping is blown up in the Mediterranean Sea, like the Houthis are doing, if Hezbollah does in the Mediterranean what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea,
they'll make it Israel's problem, and they won't engage. Because let me tell you why. Because as it sits, NATO is already facing a potential triggering of Article 5 based on what's happening with Russia. All it's going to take is Russia to be aggressive towards Poland or one of these other NATO members, right? It could even be Russia, firing, let's just call it roof knocking. It could be something as simple as Russia roof knocking, somewhere in the Baltic or somewhere in the Black Sea, and in essence, Article 5 has to get triggered. The problem is, and for those of you that don't know what Article 5 is, Article 5 says one nation gets involved, we all get involved, okay? Yeah. Well, the problem is that it's not like there's a clause in Article 5 that says, well, once we're involved in one war, we can't get involved in another. So in essence, what happens is this is why NATO is such a bad idea in the modern day in which we live, because you can trigger Article 5 by some small regional thing that goes on, and all of a sudden you've got a world war on your hands. And then with Article 5 being triggered in one region, something else happens with another nation in another region, and you're going to have a problem.
Who's going to be on both sides of the world war? NATO on one side and what?
Well, it'll be NATO on one side, and then every single person that is sympathetic towards the cause of whoever's on the other. Well, and let me just tell you this. If NATO, we're already, based on the definition of a world war, we're already there. But if NATO, let's just say Poland gets into it with Russia, okay? And by the way, Article 5 doesn't give us any real substantiation on who the aggressor is and the person who's being attacked.
Okay.
The language is remarkably ambiguous. Okay. But let's just say that Poland ends up triggering Article 5, and you now have that problem. So Article 5 has now been triggered, and now you've got this major war that's beginning to happen. Think about what takes place. Russia has interests that must be protected. Because if they're not protected, then other nations that work with Russia can no longer be the beneficiaries. Syria gets involved. And Syria's a big nothing, but Russia in Syria gets involved. Okay, let's get more specific.
Russia's main naval base in the Mediterranean is in north of Tripoli.
Yeah, Iran gets involved. Okay, all of North Africa gets involved. Okay, let's talk about Pakistan. Pakistan guarantees gets involved. Okay, you know who else gets involved? China gets involved.
India
gets involved. And by the way,
on what side? By the way, what side's India going to be on?
Let me tell you what side India is going to be. India may very well get involved on the wrong side, because as strong of an ally as India might be right now with the United States of America, India sees and recognizes the weakness in America, and will ally itself with Pakistan and solve. And by the way, solve two birds with one stone, right? Because if they ally with Pakistan, they're no longer dealing with the entrenchments that they've been dealing with for the last couple of decades, right? And then on top of that, they put themselves in a much stronger position because at least they know the people they're allying with will help to protect their interests. The stronger that region becomes, the more dangerous things become. When the Russian Federation gets involved in an action against NATO, I'm telling you this right now, NATO loses its rear. NATO doesn't have a chance because NATO heavily requires on the strength of the United States of America, which is almost non-existent.
So we see that, or at least I do, as end time event.
100%.
That's an end time event. Are we there?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I mean, honestly, David, I don't know. There's too many checks and balances that could potentially trigger, that could put a stop to this. There are some circumstances, viable circumstances, where Article 5 can be ignored. Okay? But no legal scholars are talking about it, right? No one wants to talk about it. Because the very moment that becomes a conversation, then the strength or the perceived strength of NATO falls apart.
Okay.
So when I say big changes are coming in Israel, I'm telling you this right now. Big changes are coming in Israel. Israel, I believe, cannot afford to have any appearance of weakness, and it is happening. And unless something radical changes, look, I'm going to say this, and I know this is going to sound very inflammatory in a way, right? The biggest mistake that Israel made was the fact that they did not literally open up all hell on Gaza and get it over with within 3 to 5 weeks.
On October 10th.
It should have been done by the middle of November.
I agree. And we're all looking at this at hindsight and saying we agree.
Because by the time we get to 4 weeks, 5 weeks, the rest of the world's like, whatever. When we start getting into week 10, the world is like, I don't have an appetite for this.
Which brings me to the last subject I need to talk about today, because we're moving up to the 1 year anniversary.
I know, bro.
October 7th.
I know, it's crazy.
And you know where I'm going to be on that.
I know. I'm very proud of that. You've got a special trip that you're doing for that. It's going to be really great.
Which is why I think I need to talk a little bit about this, because I think we've mentioned this a couple of times here on the show, but I'm making it official. Gihon Springs is doing a 7th of October solidarity trip to Israel for anybody who wants to show their love and their support and their solidarity for Israel. The main event is going to be on the morning of the 7th of October, 2024, a year after the event. We're going to find a place overlooking the southern part of Israel. And at 6:30 in the morning, we're going to be on our knees and praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And I just get goosebumps saying that.
How many day trip is that going to be?
It's 5 day in the country, meaning not including flights. People, it's going to be 5 days. So the trip itself is going to start on the 5th, 6, 7, 8, 9. And
what's the cost of that trip?
I think $2,700, not including flights.
That's a great price.
It is. It is. I pressed it down because we're not. I mean, we've pressed down all the proceeds on this. The thing. I just want to stress a couple of things. First of all, we'll be doing a day of prayer for Gaza in the south. We'll be doing a day of prayer in the north, over the north. We'll be visiting different sites that are connected to the event. We'll be laying a wreath on the memorial service. We'll be visiting Mount Herzl and connecting to that. And
you have any pastors going with you on this trip?
No. I mean, I'm open to anybody.
Well, I may go with you.
I'm open to anybody who wants to come. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I may go with you.
And let's see if we can pull this together. And what I'm trying to say is this. When I was, the last tour I did in Israel, I saw the way Christians in Israel impacted the Israelis. I want Israel to know that there are Christians that are going to come all the way from the United States with all of, I mean, again, we'll take all the security precautions that we need, but are willing to stand with Israel and say, we remember what happened to you. We love you. We're praying for you. We're supporting for you because we are Christians. That is going to be an amazing, amazing statement. And I'm trying to get the Israeli government mixed in. I'm trying to get Israelis mixed in.
I'll get a hold of the foreign minister's
and we're going to put it together. But if you are interested in being a part of this, please, please, please contact me. The Gihon Springs website has a link. Contact me. The Balagan Connection has a link, and we'll make this happen. And I think that's a good price if we're doing 5 days of touring inland, not including flights.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you are interested, please, this is the time to do it because we got to get this. We got to get this moving.
Yep. I agree with you. Great conversation today.
Yep.
I think a lot of change is coming in Israel right now. I think there's so much stuff that's going to happen, and it's weird because a lot of it is unknown. Like I just can't. There's no way of actually knowing what's gonna come of it. It's very hard. This one is a tough one. I do know that we're going to enter into a time of peace in Israel. We have to, based on what we know in Ezekiel 38. But how are we getting there? I got no idea.
No idea. By the way, before I change subjects, I want to tie one more thing.
Yeah, please.
Gihon Springs is a ministry of Jeff and Karen Johnson.
Yep.
Jeff led tours to Israel for years.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first Gihon Spring tour to Israel. And I'm proud to say that Gihon Springs is continuing Jeff Johnson's legacy.
Amen.
And I'm proud to be a part of that.
It's so funny. You think about Jeff Johnson's legacy. Jeff Johnson's legacy is in this ministry here. Jeff Johnson's legacy is in a lot of things all over the world. There's a lot of churches that wouldn't be churches if it wasn't for Pastor Jeff.
So, yeah. But this is Jeff Johnson's legacy going to Israel to show support, and I think he would have been proud of this.
Yeah, I know he would be. That's why I'm strongly considering just going with you on this one.
I get all goosebumps every
really
time
special.
I think about it.
I think we might
Come
talk
on, you
about
guys.
that.
We're waiting.
Yeah, if you're interested, go to GihonSprings.com. Yep. We are going to do, by the way, David and I are going to work on an Israel trip together.
Yep.
A big one. That'll be a 2-week one. That'll be sometime in 2025. We're looking forward to that.
You're going to make me eat hummus for 2 weeks?
Come on, bro.
Come on.
Eat hummus. I'm not going to make you do any of that, bro. You're going to eat all of that. Shawarma, waful, whatever. You're going to eat it all. We're going to have a lot of fun. I can't wait. I just can't wait to go back. It's going to be a good
What
trip.
are we praying for?
I mean, you're going to walk through the old city and eat some good food.
There we go. Oh, yeah. Hummus with pine nuts, with roasted pine nuts.
Oh, man. Don't get me, bro. You're going to get me going nuts right now.
Well, I'm hungry.
Oh,
what are we praying for this week?
We just need to pray for wisdom. We need to pray for truth to come out. We need to pray for deception to not be allowed to continue in this context. It's very ugly.
Pray that I'm going to swallow this agreement that they're tying together.
I don't choking me up. It's one of those things that I just don't even want to be thinking about, man. It's so ugly. Yeah. It's the politics of this are just so stupid.
So I have to say, though, I did enjoy the 4th of July here. The way I tend to say it, I was smelling more gun smoke and gunpowder smoke on the beach in Southern California than I did in all my years in Lebanon.
Yeah, it's like you're in a war zone, man. It's crazy.
You guys are wacko.
Unbelievably crazy.
We are wacko.
Yeah, I was on July the 3rd, I was sitting on the tarmac of a military base. Ooh. Looking at fireworks going off while looking at the shadows of Black Hawk helicopters. It was really cool.
We saw some of them flying along the coast that day.
Oh, they were very active. Very, very active. Fighter jets, Black Hawks. There were a couple of Apaches floating around.
Well, I think I saw the Blue Angels one morning.
They were not Blue Angels. They were the Swiss Flying Force, actually, that was here. Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's interesting because when we were there at the air base, all of their fighter jets were parked there. It was really cool. They were all parked in formation.
Cool.
Yeah, you saw 9 of them, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the Blue Angels don't fly in 9. But this was
well,
Swiss.
I mean, I didn't know anybody would.
It was them. Yeah. They were doing a show somewhere near,
all right.
which was really, really cool.
Learn something.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Really, really cool. Yeah, and you're right, Nicole. Israel does have female F-35 and F-15 pilots. Yeah, I'm telling you, Israel has world-class pilots. They do things that are crazy.
Well, they have to be world-class because, they kicked me out.
You remember when we were watching them do those F-15 exercises off Carmel, when we were standing on the top of Carmel watching do those crazy separations, and like our pilots wouldn't do that kind of stuff.
I think we do have the best Air Force. But again, and here's something that's happened to me after October 7th. I used to be very, very proud and very, very, and I'm more careful now.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm more careful, a lot more careful.
Yeah. It's amazing how young those pilots are, too.
Yep.
I'll have to show you a picture when I can find it of a young guy. He's 26 years old. He was 26 years old, Israeli pilot that I got to talk to for a while. And he's Israeli citizen born in Egypt. And the story about that is very interesting. I think his mom and dad were on a diplomatic mission of some sort or something like that. Anyway, he was born in Egypt. He speaks perfect Egyptian Arabic, perfect Hebrew, and perfect English. Cool. And he started in an F-15. The first time he ever saw combat with a Syrian fighter jet, he was like 23 years old, flying that fighter jet. And now, for whatever reason, he's doing training, fighter jet training, and flies your cargo jets over the near the Dead Sea area. I forgot where. I don't know what he's doing.
C-130s.
His older C-130s. Well, it's interesting. He told me this, and I didn't even know this was the case until later. But he says every pilot on the face of the earth that knows anything about Israel, their dream place to fly is the Dead Sea, because it's the only place in the world where you can fly at 1,000 feet above ground level and be at 200 feet below sea level. Below sea level.
Like in the movies, crazy. The altimeter is below zero.
It's wild. It's wild.
No, I actually landed in a C-130 in a little strip next to Masada.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
We've seen that strip many, many times. We've seen them land and take off from that strip many times.
Well, here's the problem. Takeoff is very, very rough.
It's nasty.
They had to use rockets.
Darn near vertical, right?
Yeah, you had to use rockets to kind of take off from that short strip. Now they're using them for drones, but that's another story.
Oh, I didn't know that, because the last time I was at the Dead Sea, we were watching those planes going in and out.
Now it's a drone site. And I wonder where the drones fly to.
Yeah. Well, my guess is somewhere east.
Somewhere to the
east. All right, well, there it is.
Pray for us.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we just thank you, Lord, for the nation of Israel. And we thank you for the fact that it continues to serve as a sign that you are God. And we thank you for what you've done, Lord, with the nation. Lord, as we've been talking about these things, we pray, God, for your sovereign hand to protect your people. We pray, God, that you would give us a heart and a mind to understand and know and recognize, Lord, what it is you're doing, Lord, and give us a desire to want to be involved in these things, to speak up, to get plugged in, Lord, that we would just do the things, Lord, that are pleasing to you and that you would be glorified. So, Father, we just look to you. We love you. We thank you. And we ask these things in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, you guys, listen, we love you very much. We thank you for joining us. Of course, it's always a great time being able to do this with you guys. These are great. These live shows are a lot of fun. So,
it's amazing.
Yep.
And check out Gijón Springs if you're interested. We'd like to see you there. We need people there to say to Israel, here we are.
If you have not subscribed to David's YouTube page, Balagan Connection, you need to. I promise you we'll start having a lot more videos coming up. The goal is 2 or 3 a week, and I think we're going to get there soon.
Yep.
Yeah, we're working on that.
We got our wives. I got my wife kind of in the world. Right, yep. Christy?
Yeah, Christy's going to be the regulator. She can do it.
Okay.
Yep. All right. We love you guys. God bless you. Keep fighting the good fight.